Hello my friends, my name is Rich and welcome to Greatest Rock and Metal. On Greatest Rock and Metal, I talk about what are for me the greatest rock albums and bands and gigs of all time, based on listening to thousands of CDs and albums and going to hundreds of concerts over many years. If you enjoy what you see, please press the red button to subscribe to the channel so that you can see future episodes of Greatest Rock and Metal. Today, we're going to go and delve into the new metal genre of music. New as in N-U. I don't know who creates these things. To me, it's all just rock and metal. But anyway, we're going to delve into the new metal genre with probably one of, if not the most, successful bands to come out of, or commercially successful bands I should say, commercially successful bands to come out of the genre, and that is Disturbed. Disturbed have sold a lot of records. They may not do some of the headlinings of festivals like System of a Down or Slipknot do, a couple of other new metal bands who've done very well for themselves, but commercially Disturbed sell a lot of records, albums, whatever you want to call them. My introduction to Disturbed came very early on. I was right there at the beginning when I first heard that single in the year 2000, the single Stupify. I was like, wow, this is great. And as always, rock and metal fans, you stick some vulgar words in there and we're on it. We love it. And one of the great things about Stupify was the use of the word fuck. And been employed brilliantly before, of course, by the likes of Rage Against the Machine, Fuck You, I Won't Do What You Tell Me, or by Trent Reznor in 9 Inch Nails, I'm Gonna Fuck You Like an Animal. Or even before that, we had Wasp in the early 1980s with Fuck Like a Beast. And here come Disturbed with their own version of it. And Stupify was a great introduction to Disturbed. They also had an image which captured people's attention. And it was mainly this guy, David Draiman. I don't know if you can see him there behind the CD. David Draiman, the singer, the bald head, the whatever, the metal in his chin. I don't know what you call those things. The piercing metal in his chin, and the incredible vocals. Very unique vocal style. Talk more about that later. So it was that single that piqued my interest, and of course I bought their debut album that same year as well, The Sickness, which we're going to talk about soon. A bit of history with the band. Well, it actually took them quite a long time to get success. They formed in 1994, and like I say, it wasn't until the year 2000 that they were able to get some success. And that was really at the time when the 2000s, when new metal started to kick off. What is new metal? It's all sorts of things, really. I guess a definition of new metal would be taking heavy metal as its basis and then mixing it with all sorts of other musical styles. The most prominent one being rap, or a rap style of delivery. You've got bands like Korn that I wouldn't say are true rap, but a bit of the vocal style is rap. Also a trait of new metal is no guitar solos, and having a guitar sound which is more syncopated or staccato kind of guitar style riffs. And that's what I say kind of a broad definition of new metal would be. Just a mixture of musical styles with the metal sound. Having said that, Disturbed very much stick in their wheelhouse, do we say? Across all of their albums, they stick to the Disturbed sound. Much like bands like Slayer and AC/DC, you know what you're going to get when you buy a Disturbed album. They found their formula and they stick with it. And it has been a very successful formula. They quickly gained success with their debut album, The Sickness, and in fact they had a run of 5 albums that all debuted at #1 on the Billboard American charts, just showing how big they are. And granted, to be honest, their biggest success has been in America. Outside of America, yes, they're still able to play arenas and maybe headline some of the smaller festivals, but America is really where their success has been based. And one of the other things that has led to their success is a very clever choice of cover songs. In fact, I think every one of their studio albums has had a cover song on it. I think I'm right in saying that, but I could also be wrong. But I know most of them have had a cover song on it. And it started with, on this first album, they had a Tears for Fears song that was called Shout, 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 Let It All Out. That one that they covered. They also had success later on their 10,000 Fists album with a Genesis song, Land of Confusion, that they covered. Whoa! And probably their biggest success with a cover song came more recently when they covered Simon and Garfunkel's Sound of Silence. This is the sound of silence. David Draymond is a brilliant vocalist, and he has certainly been a key to Disturbed's success. So, let's go back to the year 2000 and the debut album. This is the newly released 20th anniversary edition of the album, on what they term as being, I think, smoky black vinyl, or what I term clear vinyl with just a lot of pen marks all over it, in my opinion. But it's the quality of the music that's on there that is, of course, the most important thing. And it's a great album. It was a good, strong debut album. Not perfect throughout, but there's enough great tracks on here to make you want to go back and listen again and again. And of course, it was good enough to skyrocket their career. And they've had a very successful 20-year career. If we forget those first 6 years after they formed. So from 2000 onwards, from the debut album onwards. I always pick my favourite 4 tracks, and what's interesting about this album is that my favourite 4 are the first 4 tracks on the album. The first 4 tracks on this album are all brilliant. The album kicks off with the song Voices. Starts off with a very low sound that builds up this guitar riff, ding 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 ding, just getting louder and louder, and then the voice hits, and we're off and running with Voices. The next track, The Game. This is another one that has a brilliant intro, like an electronic drum beat intro, then mixed in with the guitar riff, and it builds up, and then we hear that amazing voice again. I'm not going to try and mimic it, because David Draymond's voice is just so unique, but so worth listening to, and it hooks you in. Those of you who are old enough remember Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson always had this "Yoo-hoo." or something like that. It's like a signature sound. Drayman has this signature sound. Many might term it like a monkey chant kind of sound. I'm not really sure. You can decide for yourself what kind of sound he has. Which is best shown on the track, the biggest track on this album in terms of the rock and metal fans love, Down With The Sickness. So that's the fourth one. I'll come back onto that one. The third track I would choose, the third track on the album, is Stupify. Been waiting my life for just one little innocent fuck. This is where we get the use of the word fuck throughout the song. But it's delivered in a way that you're not really sure, is he saying fuck? And that was one of the great successes of it. I'm not really sure if they did a radio edit version of this. I think they were able to get away with it because you don't really know if he's saying that word or not, because again, it's that vocal sound that he uses, the tone he uses, the delivery. And then let's come back to Down With The Sickness. What a brilliant track. We get once again the I did it. I said I wasn't going to do it, but I did it anyway. Vocal delivery, and then come on, get down with the sickness. A very apt song actually for the year 2020, yeah, Down With The Sickness. Although I am not down with this sickness at all. I wish it would fuck off, to be honest. Okay, so there you have it. The album, The Sickness. Highly recommended, and a great way for Disturbed to start their career. Let's talk about seeing Disturbed live, but before we do that, let's take a look at rock t-shirts by the sea. Hope you enjoyed that. So let's go back to the year 2001, and more specifically October 2001. And it just so happened that I have a holiday in America. And brilliant! Disturbed are playing at the same time as I am there. And they are playing at the Hollywood Palladium. And I was lucky enough to get a ticket, and this is the ticket. Quite faded. I've kind of written some names of the support bands on there, because this was a very special gig. This was part of what they called their Music as a Weapon tour, and it featured a 5-band bill. Now all of these bands were part of the new metal scene at the time, and we had on the bill, we had a band called Systematic, Stereo Mud, but then it was the next two bands that really made this a hot ticket, because the next two bands were Edema, who had just had a bit of success on MTV with one of their new songs, but a band that had had even more success recently, Drowning Pool, who have this fantastic classic metal anthem, new metal anthem, Bodies. Let the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies hit the floor. There cannot be a person out there who does not love the song Bodies. If you don't know it, check it out. Drowning Pool, Bodies, YouTube search it after you have finished watching me, of course. And then we had Disturbed coming on to close the show. And in those days, Drayman used to start the show, David Drayman, the singer, used to start the show by being wheeled out in a straitjacket. That was part of the gimmick that was employed, and then they would start the show. An interesting theatrical start to the show. But what was interesting with Disturbed and the theatrics is they didn't do more of it, which is quite surprising. They'll start the show like that, but there was no more theatrics within the show, which I think was a bit of a missed opportunity. If we look at some of the biggest bands in the world, rock and metal bands in the world, they do have a real theatrical part to them. Slipknot, Iron Maiden, Rammstein, Kiss, yeah, all of these bands have all, AC/DC, yeah, they've all employed either theatrics themselves or they've had a big theatrical stage show around them. And I think it really adds to the gig going experience. Anyway, moving on from that. So what about the gig itself? Well, I'm not going to talk about the music of this gig. I'm going to talk about the atmosphere. I hadn't been to a rock or metal gig in America before, I don't think. And one of the things that struck me, this was in Hollywood Palladium. Now at the time, I don't know what it's like now, but at the time, this sort of seemed to me like a very, very dangerous, rough part of Los Angeles. And I must be honest, walking to the gig, I was staying in a motel nearby, and just that 10-minute walk to the venue, I felt a bit like, bloody hell, I seem a bit out my depth here. And then when I get to the gig, there's a very, I can only describe it as like an aggressive atmosphere around the place. Everyone being very friendly, as rock and metal fans are, but it just felt intimidating and aggressive. And then you go to the door and there's a metal detector and a very thorough search to check that you've got nothing that can hurt anyone, guns or knives or what have you. Now, for a lad from the UK, this was quite intimidating. I wasn't a lad then, was I? A young man. We weren't used to this when we went to gigs in the UK, and this felt quite intimidating in itself. And of course, this was the growth of new metal, and so what you see then is a lot of something that's very common today, very, very common today. And of course, I grew up in a punk era as well, so I should be used to it. But there was all the piercings and the tattoos and a bit of a gothy look as well, and it's all mixed together, and scars where kids have been cutting themselves and all of that kind of stuff, which was kind of seen as trendy at the time. And it did feel intimidating, as I've said that word before. It took me a while to relax into the gig, but to be honest, once the gig got going, I had a great time. It was just great to be at a gig in America. It was an experience for me, and certainly one that I will never forget. And Disturbed were great that night. And to be honest, I've seen Disturbed several times since then, and they always put on a good concert. David Draymond is a great frontman, and the guys in the band are superb musicians, and they always put on a very entertaining show. And they have so many great songs. For me, even though The Sickness is a good album, they haven't actually made what I would call that definitive classic album. But what they do have on every album, they always have probably 4 or 5 really, really strong songs on there. So that's Disturbed. If you have enjoyed the episode, which I hope you have, please press the red button to subscribe to see future episodes of Greatest Rock and Metal. And Disturbed haven't had a great size of discography, so I would normally tell you what my favourite 4 albums are, but here, because their discography is a little bit smaller, I'm just going to recommend 2. Of course, I recommend that you check out The Sickness, and also This album from 2005, which is titled 10,000 Fists. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, as always, we rock!